The first series of Songtale books that came out were the Songtale books the song tales that were in the First Steps in Music main book, First Steps, the Green Bible, First Steps in Music. And when we set out and did the very first one, the Crabfish, it was an experiment. Let's see how it works to turn one of these song tales into a picture book. That first book was illustrated by Vincent Wen, who is one of the lead illustrators of the Ice Age 2 animated movie. We went searching for an artist, and we were guided by one of our layout people to review 3 different people's art. And I liked his style. So I selected it. And we communicated only through emails. I never met him. He's in California. And the Crabfish book came out. My university, which is where Isaiah was a student in the art school, did a little story about John Feierabend's new children's book, The Crabfish. And I got a phone call from the dean of the art school, who was talking to some of the professors in the illustration department. It would have been a fellow named Dennis Nolan back then. He since has passed away. And the dean said to me, "Are you going to do more of these books?" And I went, well, maybe. We'll see how this one does. And he said, "Would you consider using students to illustrate any of these books?" And I went, no, we have a budget to hire professional illustrators. And he said, "Well, that's too bad, because our art school has a rather world-renowned illustration department. And 3 of the faculty are incredible illustrators themselves and have a whole series of children's books out there already. And they teach a course in the senior year. So the first day of class, I share whatever I know about the song. And I don't give them too much guide. I tell them I like all of the illustrations to be a 2-page spread. Don't do an illustration on this page and a different one on this page. So all the illustrations should be two pages. I tell them that I'm interested in, it has to be appealing to an age group around 4 years old to 7 years old. So think that some of the students who are 20 themselves, they were thinking of illustrating in a more sophisticated style, sort of anime or high schoolish age stuff. And when I would see their work, I would go, "That's a little scary for a 5-year-old." So after the first day, Bill takes it from there. Oh, and I leave all the words to them, and they all get the sound file, they all get the words. And then the art teacher starts to work with them. And I know I'm going to miss lots of it. I'm not around while they're doing it, but he spends some of the weeks talking about characterization and developing characterization. Some of the weeks about perspectives and how to vary your perspectives on a page. So the book is interesting as you turn a page, it's a different perspective, and on. There's choosing your palettes and all that. The students are free to, by now they've had a class in everything: watercolor, acrylics, oil, computer. They've had all those classes, and they get to choose which medium they're going to want to do this. And you can imagine that it takes a couple days to sit with all these people for 15 minutes each. And they show me their idea. Well, I'm thinking of this storyline, and I'm thinking of this, and I get a chance to give some feedback. And mostly, I'm just sort of interested. And I go, "Well, I think there's everything about this sounds good. Let's see where it'll go from here." Sometimes I say, "I'm a little confused. What's happening here, and how did we get to that location?" And there seems to be a disconnect between this location and that location, and how they get there. And that I offer my minimal feedback. And then they're off again. And they are in the process of taking in my feedback, as well as taking these teeny tiny little pictures into these larger pictures. Let me show you what that looks like. So the second time I go in, it looks like this. And I'm looking at a loose leaf. This is Isaiah's loose leaf. And I have a much better idea of what the artist is thinking. When I'm looking at the little teeny tiny pictures, it's not always very clear. So I see this book, and they have to have this book done by the end of the semester. And they have to provide me with 2 paintings. So we usually go through this, and I talk about which one of these do you think you're going to use as your painting. Then continue working with the art teacher, who provides them with feedback. Well, I think there's more shadows needed over here. And this is a little too dark on this side. You're going to have to lighten those colors. And so the art teacher's walking around working with all of these 25 students on whatever their idea is. And then at the end of the semester, the students leave these books and they leave their artwork and they go home for winter break. And then I come in like the Santa Claus when they're not looking. And I look through all their books again, and I look through their 2 sample paintings again. I usually bring a couple people with me and get their opinions as well. And I can't make the decision right on that spot. I'm looking at 25 books, and probably all 25 of them would be acceptable. There's such talent in these classes that any of them could have been chosen, and they would have been an equally beautiful book. But I also took home 6 other versions that I thought were equally spectacular. So I took home 7 versions for the holidays. And when people would come into the house, I would show them, here, come here, I want you to see these 7 versions of the song. And I want your opinion. What do you think? Remember, it's for 4 to 7-year-olds, and people vote and tell me which ones they like. In the end, I have to make my decision over break and return all of the art in the books to the art school before the next semester begins, usually the middle of January, by the middle of January. Then the winter works with an art teacher. Back when Dennis taught the class, Bill was the springtime art teacher that worked with the winter. And that would be part of that student's senior project. It's never possible for the student to finish it by the end of the semester. So we let them continue working all through the summer, and they meet occasionally with the art teacher, and I come in the summer and I see what we're getting close to the final things. Here's our last chance to make changes. The final is due at the beginning of September, 1 year after the first day I walked into the class. So the process I just described takes exactly 1 year. Then sometime in September, the final whatevers are sent to GIA, and GIA begins doing the layout. So these are guides on the font, and GIA decides where on the page the words are going to go, and GIA decides what's going to be on the front cover and the back cover and all of that. So there's a whole layout process that happens in the fall of the year after Isaiah's turned in the art, and it's shipped off to a printer, and that takes about 2 months. So they always come back sometime around mid-January. So right about now, the book finally comes back, and it arrived 2 weeks ago. So it's right on schedule. So it takes about 1.5 years, doesn't it? From September to the middle of January, where we begin working on a book and we finally hold the book in our hand. The song, that's the process. And so the same process goes on. I went in once, I saw their thumbnails. I went in a second time, I saw their big drawings. I went over break, I took home, this time 8 of them, because again, it's impossible to decide. They're all wonderful. And then from the 8, I have to narrow it down and finally pick one. And I picked one. And she was notified 2 weeks ago that she was the winner. Her name is Kat. And now Kat will, for her senior project, be working with Bill Thompson, the art teacher, on developing her pages for Over the River and Through the Woods through the spring semester, through the summer, and by the fall, she's going to have to turn her artwork into GAA, and the cycle begins all over again. And in the fall, I will be giving the next song to the art school and so on. It's over all those years, the 12 Songtales, but the Songtales that are in the First Steps of Music book, and we ran out of songs. So we decided to find 5 more that are in my book of Songtales that were not in the Green Book. So I selected 5 more and so on. It's been an amazing collaboration between, I was in the music school and the dean of the art school, that it was a real world opportunity for these students. Our university kind of was stressing that. They were asking us faculty to find ways where the students could experience, once they graduate, what is it going to be like in the real world? And this fit that to a T. As you graduate as an illustration major, what is one of the things you might find yourself doing? It might be illustrating a children's book. And so I come in, they refer to me as the client. So I serve that role. If they were in the real world, they'd be taking their portfolio to a client to see if the client was interested in their work. So it's a real world experience for these students, and they get a chance to get feedback from somebody, learn how to make changes based on what that somebody is requesting of them, or they don't get the job. So it's one of the most wonderful things. My wife and I talk about this all the time, that this is probably one of the things we're the most proud of that we've worked on in our lifetime, because it's such a win-win for everybody. These are beautiful songs that everybody should know about. The illustrations are fantastic. The students get an opportunity to work through the process with a client and an art teacher who's going to guide them. After they get out in the real world, they're going to have to be on their own doing this. No, thank you very much for organizing this webinar. I hope people find it interesting. We think it's really fascinating. So that's how I chose the song. That's the process. And I